This is A to Z with Mark Zinno, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it starts now.
Good afternoon. Welcome to AZ here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, where today I tell you maybe one man isn't enough. We'll get to that here in just a moment. But welcome in. Thank you so much for joining me here on A to Z as we continue this venture on Locked On Sports. And yes, I'm still in sunny Florida through the rest of the week. I am enjoying my vacation. As you can see, it is beautiful here, but the focus always still on Atlanta as we continue on Locked On Sports, free on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Just search Locked On Sports Atlanta. We've got a lot to do today. I'm excited actually for the next segment where I'm going to tell you the one position the Falcons cannot draft coming up later on in the show. But first segment of the show brought to you by Shady Rays, an incredible independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed, durable frames, and premium high-end finishes, also something you won't find anywhere else, is Shady Rays' Insane Protection Program. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection for every single pair. They will send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Give them a try. If you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays exclusively for our listeners. Head to shadyrays.com and use the code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code locked on for the best deal of the season. 50% off, half off, folks, for 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses, backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. All right. Last night, the Hawks lose a game to Toronto, 118-108. And I talked yesterday on the show about kind of how Toronto had to contain Trae Young. I said that they needed to keep him in like the 25, 24, 22 point range. And they did that. Over the course of the last couple of games for the Hawks, I really got into the idea that maybe we don't need John Collins. Maybe Trae is enough. Like maybe the way Trae is playing right now, maybe playoff Trae, as I called him, when activated, is enough for this team to be able to actually accomplish things. And while this isn't a slight on Trae Young, I think last night against high-level defensive teams exposed the idea a little bit that Trae is enough in a 7-game series. In a 1-game thing, in playing a coin flip scenario, yes, Trae is enough. But in a 7-game series against a high-level defensive team, it's not going to be enough. And here's the problem for the Hawks. Let's just assume they get out of the play-in tournament. They're going to be facing Boston or Miami, 1 or 2 seeds right now. And those are 2 of the best defensive teams in the NBA. Much similar to Toronto. So they're going to be playing a team like they played last night, and the Hawks want to get past the team like that. It's going to take more than Trae to just do it. And so I started studying some of Trae's game logs and looking at the games where he's successful and where the Hawks are successful and what he does, plays out. And of course, you have the team on the left side and, the score and the date and everything else. And then, you can see the W's, whether they won or lost. And then you start to move over to Trae's shooting percentage, right? And the number of field goals attempted and field goals made. And you start to see these numbers. Now, Trae is a volume shooter. And you can't really pay attention to field percentage too much. He's a volume shooter. And volume shooters are going to have nights where they shoot 25% of the field, 35% of the field. It's just going to look ugly, right? And even at that, 3-point nights, some nights are going to be successful, some nights they're not. And so, I don't look at shooting percentage too much for a guy. Although when he has bad shooting nights, it's rougher on the team. It's much harder for them to win when Trae is only shooting 4 for 16 or whatever it may be. But where the difference is and where Trae is really, really effective, if you look at his box scores, is at the free line. When Trae has huge nights, where Trae gets these 35, 40, 45-point nights, he is getting to the free throw line 10, 12 times. And that's something that is super, super important. Like I did, got there 3 times, 26 points, 3 free throws. That's just not the way that Trae is going to be successful. His biggest impact is when he can put points on the board with with no clock running, with nobody blocking him, and taking extra free throws for easy buckets. He's a great free throw shooter. I mean, there's no reason to believe that he a large percentage of those free throws. So, when I watched this whole thing unfold last night, and look, they got quality effort for players, right? I think Bogey night last, I know he got Ben Herter and but those guys aren't really consistent players and consistent scorers for this lineup. And so when Trae is not on and not scoring at the level you want him to, you have to look even further down the game log to see where the other second biggest impact he makes, and that's the assist column, right? You start to see on nights where Trae, is, as I mentioned, like 4 for 16, and he's not shooting well, and he only has like 14 points or 18 points, whatever it is, and doesn't get to the free throw line. The assist column is what really matters. Because when he has those double-digit assists, when he has 11, 12 assists, 14 assists, whatever it may be, he's making other guys better around him. And that is ultimately what it's going to take for this team to be able to get out of the first round, is Trae has to choose the kind of night that he's going to have. He's going to have to recognize early on if he's not shooting well and he's not getting to the free throw line, dish, give it away. Somebody else get involved. And this is where I start to look at John Collins as very much a huge factor in this, because he truly is the only other consistent offensive presence on this team. Guys like Bogey and Herter, I don't want to use the word rotational, but from a scoring standpoint, they're rotational. These aren't guys who are going to – I think Herter had 20 last night. That's not an every night thing, right? Like, it's not like Herter goes out and averages 20 points a game. It's just not him. So on certain nights, he's going to have 20. On other nights, he's going to have 9. And on a night like last night, where they only got one consistent scorer off the bench, it's not enough. They need Collins in the lineup to be able to provide that other bona fide scorer that they just don't have without him. And so for as much as run through the last week, 2 weeks plus, looking at the Hawks and going, dude, Trae's on fire. Playoff Trae is here, and they can be great, and they're going to make some noise in the playoffs, and they're a team people should have. And I agree with all of those things. They need Collins. They truly, truly, truly need Collins, especially against the better defensive teams. Because what comes scoring standpoints against better defensive teams is doesn't allow them to focus solely on Trace. They've got to put the body on Collins. They've got to direct some defensive attention onto Collins, and that makes Trae more effective offensively. That's the big thing. That's why they need Collins against Boston, against Miami, against Toronto. Those really good defensive teams, because the average defensive teams, their whole philosophy is, well, go ahead, let Trae get 30. We'll just focus on everybody else because it's good as Trae. When Collins is on the court, you can't do that. Collins provides a whole different level of offensive firepower that teams have to account for, that defenses have to account for. And when it's a really good defense, anything you can do to take the focus off Trae makes the Hawks a better team. And that, to me, was sort of exposed last night in the game against Toronto. It really was telling watching that game unfold. Look, the Hawks had a chance to win it too, right? They were down by, I think, a point within the final 2 minutes, and it was right there for them. And I thought they were going to be able to pull it out. And I was going to say, wow, what if they, Trae didn't have his best night, and they still were able to get out of there with a win. And it wasn't to be. Trae misses a 3 at the end, and the next thing you know, they're in a foul situation, and la-di-da-di. And the Hawks didn't cover or win. You know me, I don't really care about the cover because good teams win, great teams cover. Anyway, the Hawks now, for me, with 3 games left, they know they're in the play-in tournament. That locked it up. It's just a question of seeding now between Brooklyn, Charlotte, and Atlanta. I don't think anybody will catch Cleveland with 3 games left for the 7 seed. So, getting into that 8 seed is super preferable because you may only have to play 1 game before the actual playoffs start. The 7-8 winner automatically goes, and then the loser of that game gets another crack at the winner of the 9-10 to decide who gets to the playoffs. So, last night was a little bit eye-opening. I will back off that maybe Trae is enough. I don't know that he's enough to win a playoff series against a good defensive team. If they square off against Cleveland in 7 games, even to a certain extent of Philadelphia, I think, because they had a little bit of a mental in Philadelphia, if they were to go against one of those teams, I don't think they would have any issues with Allen Collins. When you're going against Boston, Miami, Toronto, really high-level defensive teams, and Milwaukee, a whole different scenario just because of Giannis. It's a whole different game plan, a whole different everything. But against the Boston, Milwaukee, Toronto, they need John Collins, and they need him bad. All right, coming up next, The Falcons absolutely cannot draft this position. And it will also lead me to tell you why it makes total sense to draft a quarterback. That's coming up next right here on A to Z. Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube. Just search Locked On Sports wherever you get your podcast. We'll be right back.